God, this music, this version of the music
It's
is
not
just
the best, is it?
it's the worst. I
Boing, ba-boing, ba-boing, ba-boing,
Oh.
ba-boing, ba-boing.
So welcome to Coming Along, a podcast where I bring my friends along and we talk about stuff. Welcome to the pilot episode. I'm James, aka Gene. I'm an actor, a streamer, and I guess now a YouTuber. It's official. This is happening. This episode is happening. So I guess that makes me a YouTuber now. Look at me, mummy. Today I'm with my friend Tom. We've known each other now for goodness. I moved
10 years. I want to say 10 years.
It will be 10 years. I moved actually maybe nearer 9 years because I moved up.
Okay, yeah.
I moved up to your neck of the woods end of 2011, I think it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've known each other for like a good few years now. We met through the glorious British tradition of amateur dramatic theatre and bonded over a mutual love of, I guess, is something you could fair to say is an institution in the UK. Doctor Who,
Absolutely,
which is the topic for today's pilot episode. Specifically, something that's non-contentious, something we can't really have a falling out over in a pilot episode. Is the title sequence and how it's evolved through the years. So, firstly, Tom, thank you for joining me on this
pleasure
experiment.
Thanks for asking me.
How did you first come to know of Doctor Who?
Well, so this is a bit of an interesting one because unlike a lot of people my age, I'm 25, so unlike a lot of people my age, I didn't come to Doctor Who through the 2005 revival. So obviously, you know, what is it now? Almost 16 years ago. That's how most people my age would come to the show. But I actually got into it just before it came back, a couple of years before. 2003, I think, it was about when it was announced to be coming back. And that's that I had a friend who was a year younger than me actually, but he was really into it. He had all these old VHSs because his dad was into it, and so we used to watch those. And just sort of see all the old classic serials. I think the first one I ever saw was Resurrection of the Daleks, the Davison Dalek story, which isn't actually that great, but
we've had discussions about this before. I personally think it's excellent, but I totally understand.
Like
you have your issues with Eric Saywood, don't you? And
a little bit.
I understand that.
But anyway, so that was my first exposure, and then obviously, then the new one comes back, and I got really into it, because it was the ongoing thing everyone in the playground was talking about, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's my intro.
It's funny you mentioned like you got into it just before the revival started in 2005 because it was around then I think the BBC really started pushing out a lot more of the classic Doctor Who's on DVD, and it was around then I started my massive DVD collection. I'll splice you a picture into the video of my TV. It started 17 years ago, and here it is now. Massive.
Looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, so that sort of really reinvigorated my interest in the show just before the revival came around. But I'd been watching it for I'd watched it personally since like as long as I can remember. My mum got a few VHS tapes when we were kids, like the Daleks original story, War Games, Genesis of the Daleks, and one more
classics,
like some ones that they saved from the archives. Good old Ian Levine saved from the archives back in the day. God bless him. So yeah, Doctor Who, for anyone who might not know, is a long-running British science fiction show. Started in 1963, starring William Hartnell as the eponymous Doctor. It dealt with adventures through time and space. I think we can both agree a fundamentally British, quirky show.
Absolutely,
The iconography of
Britishness. Britishness runs through the DNA, doesn't it? It's you couldn't make it in America or something. It wouldn't be the same.
No, even though they tried. We will get to that at some point in this video. but yeah, it's fundamentally British. It was quite not. It was known internationally during its original run, but it didn't really break America until probably around 2010 with Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They did a lot more international filming over there as well during that time. But it's still the BBC's most popular drama export, I believe, to this day.
It makes them their most money, I think, as well. I mean, enough money to pay not just for itself, but sort of several other shows, several times over, kind of thing.
It certainly subsidizes a lot of the BBC. It's funnily enough, it's not the most successful export. Do you have any idea what is from the BBC?
Ooh, well, it's not Top Gear, is it?
Top Gear is like number 2 or 3.
Yeah,
with Doctor
I knew
Who.
Top Gear's up there. Yeah,
but no, it's keeping up appearances.
Oh, that's funny,
Richard.
Which I do quite like. I have a sort of weird guilty pleasure for it.
Apparently, it's really popular in the Scandinavian countries.
Oh yes,
I can confirm that's Europe. True. Yes,
because my girlfriend's Swedish.
There you go.
So yeah, her mum loves it.
I had a friend who lived in Denmark for a year, and he was one night with his friends he was staying with. They were just talking about British TV shows, and he just randomly went Richard, and they went, "Oh yes, keeping up appearances."
I think anything that highlights Britishness in that way, quirkiness, gets really popular abroad, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and that show is that's another very British show. So
yeah,
but yeah, no, Doctor Who, immensely popular, the most popular BBC drama export, and like top 3 most highest earning exports of all of them. And I think it's fair to say its title sequence is extremely unique and has remained unique throughout its run. Like when science fiction shows started becoming more prevalent over the years, you had your Star Treks and or other like huge popular science fiction franchises, even Stargate as well. Like that has a lovely intro, but no title sequence, I think personally, compares to what the Doctor Who one, or at least can be at times. At least there are times it got a bit, but we'll get to that. But I guess we'll start with the first sequence.
Yeah, begin at the beginning. Makes sense.
Beginning of the beginning, and this started on 23rd of November 1963. Doctor Who first aired with Unearthly Child. Okay, so that was the first title sequence for Doctor Who ever used. As I said, it started in 23rd of November 1963, and that was kept all the way through until, pretty much
67, I think. I think it ran. They had the same one for the very first few Troughtons.
That's right. Up to the moon base, I believe it was.
That's right. Yeah. So it takes them a while to update it for the next actor, but yeah.
Yeah. So, it's an effect. The effects they use is something they would go on to sort of build upon for nearly all of the remaining sequences throughout the tenure. That lovely, glorious howl round effect.
Exactly, yeah. And I think it sets the tone, doesn't it, for all the others, in that it not just obviously the music, we'll get onto that, but both the music and the visuals combine to produce this sense of something weird and eerie. That I think all the others, to some extent, I think are trying to capture. Obviously, some better than others, but I think that sets the tone for a lot of the others to follow, really. Definitely.
I feel like when you think about sort of shows that were airing sort of around that time, specifically like science fiction shows, like a lot of the old Quatermass television productions they used to make, the title sequences were usually quite sort of, there were static images of credits. They, obviously TV at the time they're still like, learning the technology and what they can do. But this was such a dramatic shift from anything that had been really seen before. Visually, as you said, absolutely.
Pioneering, yeah.
Absolutely pioneering. I feel the black and white texture and quality, especially for this sequence and for what would come next with Troughton, that lovely sort of grainy quality to it, whether that's by effects of the HowlRound or just effects of the quality of footage of the time. It gives it it really enhances that unsettling sort of aura that you mentioned. This
totally
otherworldliness.
Yeah, and it makes it sort of feel mythic as well.
Yes,
I think.
Absolutely. And something I like about it as well is the how the logo, the credits, it's just very standard font. It's almost your basic Times New Roman, and how it just sort of fades through in through to the vortex. Like it feels like they threw everything at the wall at this. All these ideas, and it all stuck. Apart from one idea, and I think you might know what I'm going to talk about.
Probably.
the using the image of the Doctor.
Yeah, which we don't get until Troughton.
And they tried it out. The footage exists somewhere of this haunting-looking man dissolving in and out of this HowlRound effect, and
it was deemed too scary, wasn't it? I think.
Verity Lambert, producer of the show at the time, said no, too scary. And if you were using that guy they used, absolutely too scary, because he's quite, like I say, he's a haunting-looking man. But I think if you'd put William Hartnell in there with his, his thumbs on his lapels, his happy smile, I think it would have worked.
Yeah, he's grandfatherly, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think, although thinking about it at the time when you're starting this new show, not having the Doctor front at the center, at least maybe for the first series in the credit sequence, is good, because you're still working out who is this guy. Because
yes,
for that,
and he isn't quite the hero, is he? For the very beginning, he's this mysterious, slightly villainous is too far, maybe, but slightly kind of he's a trickster figure. You don't know if you can trust him. And so I think, that adds to that, doesn't it?
Or does that whole thing about him willing to cave in a guy's head with a rock because he's injured, and that's not the Doctor we come to know. So putting him front and center, I feel like it puts the focus on him maybe a bit too much, perhaps, because we were very much following the story initially through Ian and Barbara's eyes.
100%. Yeah,
which is funny when you think about how we've come in the new series to sort of be introduced to companions and be introduced to them by seeing the Doctor for the first time through their eyes. It's not the Doctor meeting them. So it's quite an interesting parallel. But anyway, we have the glorious imagery completely out of this world, the time vortex. What about the music?
Well, gosh, it's again pioneering, in the sense of just nobody would have heard a sound anything like this before.
It'd all been orchestral realizations pretty much up to that point. It's like your big sort of it's sort of farty brass orchestral sort of sci-fi music. Ron Grainer, he composed it, and there's always been this big sort of hoo-ha about, he composed it, but it was really Delia Derbyshire and the BBC Radiophonic Workshop who were responsible for the arranging it. And it's that arrangement they pretty much use with some minor fluctuations from Series 1 all the way through Series 17.
It's and also it's that arrangement that the most recent composer has kind of gone back to in his Shagan Akinola. But obviously we'll come around to him eventually. But
I was thinking Murray Gold did as well. I think when the series first came back. Well, we'll come to that when we come to talk about the Chris Eccleston sequence. So the method she chose to realize it was to create each sound from scratch using different methods and tones, like your piano strings, taking notes, re-looping them, playing them back over each other, all sorts of different experimental things to create these otherworldly sounds. The workshop, as well as we know, would go on to create a lot of the sounds for Doctor Who, the infamous PM front door key on the piano wire,
the TARDIS.
Yep.
Serialization noise. Yeah.
What can we say else about this sequence apart from it's set the precedent, and I think we said it before. It's something that's tried to be replicated ever since.
Something else I do quite like about it is worth mentioning is that unlike a lot of the classic sort of vortexes or title sequences or whatever we call them, this one does sort of appear in the show in the very first, as in the fiction of the show, when the TARDIS takes off for the first time at the end of Unearthly Child episode 1, and you actually see the weird vortex shapes sort of superimposed on the characters' faces, and I love that. I think it creates a kind of real sense of this mystical kind of journey they're going to go on. And a lot of the other classic vortexes we just don't see in the story. It's just there at the beginning and at the end, and that's it.
Yeah, at least not until we get to new series. At least,
right, exactly. Yeah,
it's used a lot. It's used somewhat ad nauseum, I think, in the new series, but we'll come to that. But yeah, no, absolutely right. And there's also something I like about the asymmetry of it. It's not a perfect mirror, which is what we'd come to shortly. There's a sort of natural sort of flow of these lights and colors. It doesn't feel sort of meticulously sort of arranged. It feels like it's alive almost. And again, that sort of eerie sense of what are we looking at here?
Exactly. Yeah.
A great opening sequence.
Sets the bar high.
Sets the bar very high. Ran for 4 years till the moon base, so a little bit into Troughton's era, and it would not be seen again until
Day of the Doctor, I want to say.
Yes, 50th anniversary. That was a lovely little nod they did there, I thought.
Homage,
Yeah, got the old goosebumps going when that happened. But yeah, moving on. We move on to 11th of March, 1966. The Macra Terror broadcasts a brand new title sequence. A familiar face shows up. Okay, so that was the second Doctor Who title sequence used during Patrick Troughton's era from the Macra Terror in 1967. Yes, to the War Games, which was the end of Troughton's run. It's quite similar in a way to the previous one. It still has that lovely use of the howl-round effect, but it's a lot more emphasised. It's a lot more busier, isn't it?
That's exactly the word I was going to use, because it's busier, isn't it? There's just more shapes sort of flying around. It
feels it doesn't feel so much time vortexy to me as the other one. It feels it's hard to describe what it is really. It's like, as I'd sort of described at the end of the sequence, when you've got those sort of circular shapes sort of flowing out. As a kid, when I saw that, I sort of used to think, wow, it's like the Doctor's brain's exploding.
I was going to say they do look a bit like brains or blood cells or something sort of biological.
Yeah,
don't they?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. At this point in Doctor Who, they hadn't established that he had two hearts at this point, did they?
No. That comes in 1970.
Yeah, that was with Pertwee. Yes, you're right, with Spearhead. It's hard to describe what this one is, but I love the use of Troughton's image.
Yes,
and then the burn away to the logo. It sort of peels and crumbles away. Quite visceral, actually, the peeling away. It's quite for the type. It feels quite real, like something is burning away in front of you. It doesn't feel like an animation.
And if Troughton did have a kind of more austere or sort of scary face. I think that would be more disturbing than it is, but because he's such a jolly looking man, it sort of mitigates against the sort of spookiness somehow.
I wouldn't be surprised if the showrunner at the time, if they shared, because it wasn't Verity at that point. She'd gone by that time, hadn't she?
Would have been Innes Lloyd, I think.
Yes, Innes Lloyd. Because Derek Sherwin took over near the end, didn't he? Was it Derek?
Yeah, later on.
So Innes Lloyd. Whether the sentiment on the original idea was shared about or it looking too scary or not, or whether Pat Troughton is just the jolliest man to ever work in the BBC and just by his pure sheer delight said, yes, let's put his face in. It's a jolly old face. And then let's burn it away to reveal the logo.
It's quite funny as well compared to some of the later ones. Obviously, I don't want to get into it too much with later faces that we see. But compared to those, you can't see much of his hair at all. Obviously, you've got the little lock that sort of droops down onto his forehead.
Yeah.
But most of his the back of his head, if you like, behind his ears and all the rest of it, it's just kind of, it's too black. It doesn't pick up against
the jet black monkey's hairdo sort of fades it all in. Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but you just look at those lovely eyes and you just think, oh, I don't care that half your head is missing.
Yes.
I suppose we can call it the vortex for lack of. I mean, I can't think of any other.
Not any other word for it. Yeah.
No, they don't. They never. I don't think they ever really used it within the context of the show.
No, I don't think so.
No.
An interesting question, actually. What's the earliest that word is used?
What, the vortex?
Yes. Sorry, I'm going off a tangent here, but there's a wonderful thing called Doctor Whoogle, which is basically it's Doctor Who, but as you can search like Google, and it scans all of the scripts for the show.
Oh, fantastic!
And so you can find any use of that word. So I've just searched vortex, not till the moon base actually.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that's in the context of this thing that he travels through. But still, that is the first use of the word, which is interesting.
Okay, because I was going to think it sounds like something Tom Baker would have said a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it comes in a lot
the
more
vortex.
Later on. Yes, exactly. Yeah. There's a few Pertwee examples. Anyway, sorry, finish that.
No, I thank you for telling me about that, because if I ever decide to do a super edit of every time the Doctor said reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, I know where to go look to find it all.
Yeah, it's a good website. Yeah.
Unlike Hartnell's title sequence, this one has a much more rigid symmetry to it, which it's almost like a prism effect, almost the ripple of the Howrowd effect in it. It's quite captivating. It's stuck with me. It's stuck with me all these years. I like the dissolve of the logo sort of becoming symmetrical, so the words sort of blur together.
That is very nice.
Before eventually sort of fading out with the rest of the image.
Yeah. I just wish it had a slightly better font, personally, for this logo. I like the font more for the Hartnell. So this one's just a bit too Times New Roman for me.
Yes, it's a bit too skinny and simple.
So it's not very weird, I think is the way I put it.
No, you're right. They wouldn't really start messing about with the logo until the next sequence. But this sequence, the music as well. The music hasn't changed, however,
at least not much. Yeah,
it has a stronger, more oomphy intro, whereas like Hartnell's would fade in. This one just goes bang, diddle-ding, diddle-ding, straight in. And you're like, and there's no fade into the imagery. You're just slapped over the face with it.
That's right. Yeah,
and it really sort of catches your attention and improves on the previous in lots of ways, as you would expect it to. But you wouldn't start seeing major changes until sort of at least a couple of years later. But before we get to that, we get to the 70s and the invention of color television.
Yes. Gosh, things would never be the same again.
Oh boy. That's the showrunners of Doctor Who really go for it. Well, that is
Where to start?
Yeah. Now, behind the scenes, we were getting a brand new showrunner, we were getting a brand new doctor, a brand new companion. The format of the series was changing somewhat. It wasn't going to be so much about going off and exploring other planets and times. Other planets and times were coming to Earth. With this new change came color TV and a new title sequence, and oh boy, they went crazy with it. They decided to just show the entire color spectrum in this intro.
Pretty much. It's funny now. I'm trying to think. Is there a color they leave out? Probably not.
Yellow?
No, there's some yellow. I'm just checking it on YouTube now on silent, and there's definitely some yellow.
Oh goodness me!
They've got everything.
Yeah, they go through the whole spectrum. Maybe. They don't really have a hot pink, do they?
No, probably not. Doesn't suit Pertwee somehow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have a little bit of a touch of pink there when the logo fades in. So this one, it's quite hellish, I'd say. Is that quality judgment or no, like just how it this is one of my favorite ones because it's so
so vibrant.
Yes, bloody word. So vibrant. Instead of the sort of initially we have this sort of flowing sort of diamond in fire sort of effect, don't we?
Yeah, they really do. The bit on the sides, it really looks like flickering flames, doesn't it?
That's what I was meaning by the hellish. There's a sort of like burning. It's I don't know if this was ever used in the context of the show as saying this is the vortex, but if this was the vortex, oh god, it's scary for me.
Yes, you wouldn't want to see it too often.
No.
In a story.
For me, I look at it more as it not being a vortex. It's just a wonderful sort of array of like flickering colors and movements, and it wonderfully sort of that shape itself, how it sort of wonderfully sort of dissolves into the image of Pertwee and then out into the logo as well.
It's funny that though, because I think the when you're saying it's not the vortex necessarily, I do agree, but the sort of weird time tunnely thing that it becomes toward the second half, I think that's clearly has a big influence on later actual vortexes.
Yes,
if you see what I mean.
Definitely.
Again, obviously we'll get to those, but
it is the first sort of swirling sort of use of imagery they use in the credits, because like the Hartnell was just these flowing sort of clouds coming towards you. Troughton was this rigid, symmetrical sort of prism effect, and this one, you're right. That does have that sort of tunnel, sort of swell. But this is the one I just find hardest to pin down of what I'm seeing. Really, like I can get some sort of understanding with the others, but this one, at least with that sort of flaming, sort of the what was I looking up on? Someone called it effect varying shape.
Right.
A blaring spectrum of colours.
This probably sounds disrespectful, but I think it looks a little bit like a screensaver.
No, I
know what I mean?
I can understand that, because I used to have a screensaver which turned all of my desktop on fire. So I can sort of see that. It would be. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with Troughton, and we would see it occasionally, I think maybe once or twice in Pertwee, is unique title cards, like after the credits.
That's
so,
true.
If War Games had that lovely,
yes,
and then
I think Ice Warriors has one. I think.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a while.
In fact, I think even as long ago as War Machines has one. Toward the end of I think so. There's a few, yes. And then
you're right.
There's
War
a few
Machines one. Pertwee had the one I remember was the Inferno title
that's
card.
Great.
A great little sequence. And it's because from here on in, episode titles, writers, and numbers were included in credits consistently from here on in. Something which was a varying thing in the previous eras. Before, like individual episodes were named individually. Unearthly Child was just the first title of the first episode, and that became the name of that serial
sort of for convenience.
For conveniency and in retrospect, in hindsight, sort of thing. So yeah, we blare into the 70s with this. I don't know what more I can say on this one really. Apart from the logo, this is the first time they start making the
Yes.
logo look a bit science fiction-y.
Yeah.
And it's a logo which would stand the test of time.
Indeed.
It's the one they use on all of the classic Doctor Who DVD releases.
Yeah. A lot of other merchandise generally. They more or less bring it back for McGann. Obviously, we'll come back to that. But the TV movie, it's sort of revamped version of that.
Oh, yes, they do. That sequence has a weird place in my heart, but we'll get to it. It looks great in color. I think the weakness of it, actually, funnily enough, is the use of Pertwee's face. And not because Pertwee's face is in it, it's just because when the image goes to that static shot, that wonderful color and spectrum dissolves into just this really flat static image of him.
It's just against black, isn't he? It looks like not quite like a passport photo, but a little bit.
Yeah, this is his mugshot.
Yeah.
It's the one weakness in it, but it's I think it's quite unique in some respects amongst all of the others.
It really makes me think early 70s as well. It's got that sort of slightly psychedelic glam rock kind of look to it somehow, doesn't it?
You can imagine it being like on a screen backing T-Rex or something at a gig.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Were they 70s or were they 60s? Yeah, they were 70s.
I think they were. Yeah.
So we've stepped into the 70s in glorious color, but bonus bonus sequence.
Oh boy.
The Delaware Edition. So, how would you... I think you know the history behind the Delaware Edition a bit more than I do. Now, as I understand it, it was trialed. It was never meant to be used, but was accidentally released on international versions of a couple of serials from Pertwee's era.
In Australia, I think.
Yeah.
It's called Delaware after the name of a particular synthesizer. I had to just look that up because I wasn't sure. I thought it was somebody's surname, but no, it's a synthesizer that they used. Yes,
because I always knew it as the Australia thing. It was only when I was talking to you recently that I knew it was called the Delaware version or the Delaware Edition, and I thought, was it broadcast in Delaware or something?
No,
one random TV station in Delaware got this one mislabeled episode of the Doctor Who with the different sequence. So God, this music, this version of the music
is
not
just the best, is it?
It's the worst. It's boing
boing boing boing.
I would diplomatically describe it as it's the result of Bill Bailey getting drunk one night in his underpants, having too many smokes, and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to out on my theremin for the evening. And he's just going...
It sounds like an experiment.
It sounds like someone has just experimented with the theme and just completely bastardized it. And it hasn't polished. And it hasn't got that sort of... Because there were versions of the Doctor Who theme sort of being covered. There was a pop group in the 70s. I looked them up last night. I can't remember what they were. I will splice them in somehow. They did that lovely disco version of the Doctor Who theme.
Orbital?
No, that's much later. No, we're talking
later,
we're talking proper 70s disco. It's like, that is, good experimentation. The Delaware Edition is just, you got drunk one night. You know when something bizarre comes out, like an entertainment piece, and someone says, "Man, what must the creators been smoking to come up with that? It's genius." It's so much no, this is what actually happens when you get drunk and stoned and try and come up with something creative. You come up with absolute garbage because you think you're on top of the world and you're like a god of creativity, and then you sober up the next day and you go, oh Jesus,
let's just wipe that and forget it never happened. Which more or less is what they tried to do.
I sincerely hope that's what happened with this. Like the arranger composer is just like, I mean, Delia Derbyshire just one night just goes, I'm gonna mess about with the theme, see what happens. It just sounds crazy. Let's move on. let's get to 15th of December 1973. The Time Warrior. So it's quite a shift from.
It's quite different, isn't it? Yeah.
Before, it's still sort of using the HowlRound effect in a sense, but it's completely. It's so different from what we've had before. It's not this sort of very loose, almost natural sort of flowing energy. It's not this symmetrical prism effect. It's this wonderful. A literal tunnel effect.
Yeah. It's the most tunnel-like we've had so far by miles, isn't it? And that obviously leads into what they'll do with Tom Baker in the next few seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the splits, the sort of the screen effects they use with the stars at the beginning, the slit screen effect, I think it was called. For the light sort of shooting past, it really gave that wonderful sense of motion and travel.
100%. I really like it.
It's the first one. Like, I know there was elements of movement in William Hartnell's one. There's sort of this feeling of going forward, but this is the first one for me where there is this real sense of speeding through the vortex, speeding through space, traveling and adventure.
Yeah, it's pacier, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like the sequence meets the energy of the theme.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. And one thing I do like about it is I think there's little glimpses of the future in there. So firstly, the stars you mentioned at the beginning, I always think of the 80s star field, which obviously we'll come on to. I don't know if they were deliberately harking back to this, quite possibly not, but I just get a sense that, this introduced that idea. And then maybe they sort of built on that later. And then obviously there's, again, as I already mentioned, the fact that it kind of debuts the tunnel thing that we're going to get more with Tom Baker in the next few seasons.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when in the interim, when we were just the break for the edit for the splice of the video, and you said to me you'd forgotten that Pertwee had this sequence, and I'd forgotten it as well.
Yeah, because it only did the 1 year. I think it's easy to forget.
It only did the 1 year, absolutely. And I don't know if it was just because the John Pertwee stories I had as a kid just happened to be more of his classics from the earlier days. Because I always find John Pertwee. Actually, no, that's funny because I did see Death to the Daleks as a kid on video.
Yeah,
so it must
that's
have been
this season, isn't it?
It is this season. Yeah, because Sarah Jane's with him.
Yeah,
I feel like apart from that story, though, John Pertwee's last series it has moments, but some of the stories themselves aren't particularly as memorable as some of his earlier ones.
Yeah, I quite like Time Warrior. But yeah, Monster of Peladon is just a bit of a rerun of Curse, and I'm not a big fan. Planet of the Spiders is a bit over long, and it's we are the spiders. He's not his best.
No.
Excuse me. The other thing I was going to say, though, this is probably very unintentional, but so obviously Pertwee himself appears with his face as before, but this time we get his whole body in shot as he zooms back into the vortex, and it's a very odd pose that's kind of happening. It's slightly Tutankhamun mummy-esque. I I don't know if you get that vibe. That's my.
I sort of do. I sort of do. I kind of thought. I didn't really. I thought it was more just a sort of like because his doctor was meant to be like the sort of James Bond sort
yes,
of
gadget loving,
yeah,
dandy outfits.
Yeah, so I always saw that pose as a more sort of I'm a cocky hero sort of.
Right. Yes. No, that also works.
Yeah. The thing that annoyed me about that though is the because I grew up seeing the Tom Baker version of that intro, which is beautifully, like almost perfectly symmetrical, even to the point that like Tom Baker himself looks almost symmetrical, even though that's not biologically possible for someone to be perfectly symmetrical. But that silhouette of Pertwee's body going back, being that sort of like one shoulder's slightly higher than the other because the cape's ruffled up a bit more, when one leg's a bit further forward. It just kind of sort of, and I don't know. The OCD in me just sort of went, no. You can't.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. It's an odd choice.
Yeah. However,
it's the only one, isn't it, that we have the full. I was going to say it's the only one where we have the full body. I think. That I can think of, anyway.
Yes, I think. I'm trying to remember. Yes.
Oh, maybe I shouldn't say that definitively, but yes, we'll say that.
Yeah, you are right. You are right. Yeah, because Tom Baker only ever had his face. Peter, Colin, Sylvester, Paul didn't have his, and no one until Smith. Yeah, no, that is right. It's only ever just been the faces, apart from him. It's also this sequence. We get the first use of the iconic diamond logo.
Oh yes, we should mention that, of course.
That was the one that was. We talked about the last logo being used on all the classic Who DVDs. The diamond logo was the one they used on all of the VHS releases back in the 90s. In its glorious blue, yellow, and red color scheme, which I always thought was a bit garish, but in this sequence, that tone of blue, it looks really nice.
Yes, the blue is nice. Yeah. Yes, I think when you add other colors, it looks way too. Not to sound too sniffy, but kind of children's cartoon, not in a good way.
Yeah.
It looks a bit too childish, I think.
Well, come on, this is Pat Sharp's Funhouse, you know. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's great for marketing. It's great for merchandise and advertising. In those colors.
It stands out. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think a good decision to make it match in with the color of Pertwee. And talking to Pertwee again, I love the actual image of him, the shoulders and the head before it pans back. I really love that image.
Oh yeah, no, it's a good look, and his hair as well is more what's that word Terrence Dicks always? Is it bouffant? I think his hair's kind of got that kind of flowing sort of,
it's gotten longer.
The way Capaldi's hair does as well. And I love that. I think he looks better than he did in his first picture that they used for the earlier stuff.
Yeah, it's always funny when they use the faces in the sequences and they don't change it. And like with Peter Davison, actually no, with Tom Baker, he's the main one. Like because they took his picture at the start. Didn't change the sequence for years, and when you see him at the end of you put those two sequences side by side. We'll get to it. You see the age difference. You're like, oh wow, Time Lords do age. Only lasts for a year. This sequence up to Planet of the Spiders, and go into one of the longest lasting sequences used in the show. From Robots in 1974, 28th of December, all the way to the Horns of Nimon. So that's like 2 different showrunner errors.
6 years, I think.
Yep,
is it?
6 years.
Yeah.
We go into the Doctor who is possibly the most iconic and most recognizable Doctors of at least of all the classic Who's. It's Tom Baker and the 4th Doctor. So we've not changed a huge amount from Pertwee's last sequence, but there are some changes.
Definitely, yeah.
I think the biggest change is the obviously apart from a different actor, is the use of the TARDIS in the title sequence.
First time doing that.
You know how I said about Pertwee's sort of silhouette being non-symmetrical and sort of jarring with me? The fact that they use the TARDIS and then they use that effect as an outline to sort of fade out. It's just it soothes my OCD for symmetry, basically. I think that again really emphasized this is the vortex, and
yes,
it's even more vortexy than before, I'd say.
Yeah, because you're encouraged to think of the TARDIS traveling through it, aren't you? So you think that's the association there. Yeah,
absolutely. I like how the sequence starts before you even get to the TARDIS. Just those two sort of columns of colors just fading out, and then they envelop they open up and create the shape of the TARDIS. It comes towards you. The music crescendo builds up, and then you get a lovely fade in the image of Tom Baker, which is still flat like the original Pertwee one, but they do. I think the transitions into it. I mean, when I say the Pertwee one, I mean like the Pertwee one from his first sequence.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a flat static image, but the fade into it and how they transition out of it just works so better. Like this for me is the sequence that flows from sequence to effect so well.
Yes, it's got a lot of, each individual part of it is recognizable and strong, but there's a sense that you flow organically from each part to the next.
Yes.
I'd agree.
The effect on the tunnel as well. Like as a kid, I'm pretty sure I saw that sort of tunnel on my screen sort of flowing out towards me. And I'm almost convinced, like as a kid, I must have thought this is how a TV looks on the inside. Like these sort of shapes and colors on the inside of this tunnel are the warped images that are being projected onto my screen. And when they land on my screen, they're flat. That's what I thought this was. I thought this was literally like the images and like shapes and imagery just being twisted and contorted as it would through black holes, space and time. I think it's just a wonderful visual feast, this one.
Yeah, it's pretty magical, isn't it? Similar color tones, I suppose, to the last one. Bit of grey in there at one point.
Yeah,
isn't there? There's that kind of swirling circle round grey bit.
Yeah, like a really
the TARDIS, like
a platinum silver almost. Really.
Yeah, maybe silver, not grey.
Yeah, but no, I think it's I think it's the one that stood the test of time the most.
Yes, probably true. It doesn't look obviously dated, or you look at it and you think, "Oh, this is the 70s" or something. I'd agree.
I think the only thing that dates it as being the 70s is Tom Baker's attire.
Yes, true.
All the browns and the reds and the creams in that color scheme, that sort of thing. That's the only thing that dates it, because it's still, like I say, still transcends. Whereas, like, we'll come to later sequences, I think they are very much of their time.
Very 80s, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to those. So it was used for 6 years. Similarities to the Pertwee's one, but some minor differences. But I think they're differences that flow really well to each other. And with the TARDIS as well, it's the first time with a TARDIS. It's the last time we'll see a TARDIS in the title sequence until we get to Sylvester McCoy.
I was going to say.
Because, 30th of August, 1980, and JNT has taken over and he hits us with a kapow! Leisure Hive, 30th of August, 1980. And behind the
Beginning of
scenes,
season 18.
season 18. Tom Baker's been in the role now for 6 years. He's kept threatening for the last couple of years, "Oh, I'm going to leave." But this is the one where he does leave. This is his last series. John Nathan Turner has taken over. He is affectionately and referred to as JNT by Doctor Who fans. Possibly the most polarizing showrunner to ever hold the position of showrunner for Doctor Who, with possible exception for recent people. Say no more.
Yes, it's a tough contest, isn't it?
It is. No, J&T was the most polarizing showrunner, at least of the classic series. I don't think anyone can deny that, because
that's certainly fair. Yeah.
Some people loved what he did, some people hated it. And one of the things he did was a complete massive overhaul of the title sequence, not just visually, but music as well. So I guess we'll start with the music. We're in the 80s for sure, aren't we?
Absolutely. You can tell straight away, can't you? With the Peter Howell rearrangement.
Yeah. I like this version of the music personally.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think there's anything particularly better or worse over it from the original, apart from the fact maybe that it loses that sort of otherworldliness.
Yes, it maybe isn't quite as mysterious and eerie.
Yes.
I think it has more pace and energy, though, is the flip side. So yeah, I mean, it's true that it doesn't have the kind of scream going into it that some of the Pertwee ones particularly had, you know, when you sort of the closing titles. But I do think the opening, as you so eloquently put it, kapow, really is really accurate. You know,
they visualize that and realize it in audio as well. So you have this lovely.
Yes,
you go straight into it. I don't know if there's a slight key change, but something about it does make it, maybe, like you say, there's that bit more energy and pace to it. It feels like there's an unnervingness to it, but it's not like an otherworldliness. It's a tension to it, maybe.
Yes, yeah. You sit up. It's the sort of thing you can imagine. Sort of you'd notice if this came on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
the same with the.
It doesn't make me sort of like get that sort of unnervy, sort of sicky feeling in my stomach about what we're going to watch. It has me gripping my hands on my, armrest, sort of going,
yeah,
come on, here we go, gearing up for some fun.
In for a ride, yeah.
Exactly.
And the colours and the kind of general, sort of zooming forward through the stars adds to that, I think, as well.
Now, you say colours, like this is obviously, like, we've had sequences in black and white, but for a sequence that was in the 80s, which is known for its, like, garish colours, it's quite sedate.
That's true. Yes, I was thinking, I suppose, of the glint, the sort of glances of colour and the different flares of the stars.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But I mean,
comparatively,
compared to what we'd have later, like, this is very tame in terms of colour, I think.
That's true. Yeah.
What I like about how the image of the face for Tom and for Peter, because Peter Davison's versions almost is exactly the same, pretty much.
Yeah, there's not much else to say. Really,
I don't think anything changes apart from the face. I love how the stars come together.
That is lovely. Yeah, that is a really
beautiful, beautiful, simple and beautiful effect.
Yes.
You'd almost want it then, like, the stars come together so much that they form this brightness, and then it sort of reveals the face, and then it pans forward and out and dissolves. Like we said about Pertwee's last sequence, we'd almost forgotten that existed. I'd almost forgotten Tom Baker had this sequence as well.
Yeah.
Because again, all of his and all of his more classic stories, I felt tended to come earlier in his tenure.
Yeah.
At least the ones I watched when I was younger on tape.
Yeah.
The stars coming in, the logo, how that sort of comes in as well, and then we get that lovely neon tube.
It's a nice logo, isn't it?
Yeah. It is
very 80s.
It's perfect for the show. It's not one I'd necessarily use for, like, marketing, like the diamond logo or the other ones, but it's perfect for the time it's in.
And the way that it zooms out and sort of breaks up reminds me of the Troughton logo. The way that does it's a similar effect, which I quite like.
Absolutely, yeah. How do you feel people might have felt seeing this for the first time? Like being so used, like say you were someone who watched the original Doctor Who in the 60s, and you've gotten used to the changing visuals, but then suddenly you've got this literally kapow hitting you in the face, new sequence, new theme.
I think it would have been quite surprising. Yeah, quite kind of maybe alarming. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to imagine now because it's all sort of part of the furniture.
We're so used to changing theme arrangements as modern fans these days. It's ridiculous. When we'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it'd have been quite a surprise, really. And I suppose as well, considering there was a new showrunner taking over, but there wasn't a new Doctor. It wasn't a complete overhaul like there was with Pertwee. So I don't know. It's almost like I kind of wish he'd have just stuck it out one more year with the old
before
sequence
changing it.
Before changing it.
It would have been cleaner, I suppose, wouldn't it? Sort of neater.
Like we see
to an extent.
We see it in modern Who now. Like when a showrunner leaves, the Doctor usually leaves as well, and all the cast leave as well, and it's a complete reboot, and it really offers like a revitalization to the show. Whereas this sort of 7th Tom Baker series, it feels like an epilogue to a much greater sort of tenure, almost. Really,
it's a bit of an oddity on the tail end of something else.
I'll tell you what it is. It's Tom Baker's Brexit transition period. It's not quite going to plan.
It's the end, but the moment has not been prepared for.
Nicely done, sir. Nicely done. I'm not going to. I'll show some pictures over this bit. We won't bother going for the full sequence for Peter Davison.
Full Davison,
it's exactly the same. I'll just look. There's a picture of Peter Davison in the place of Tom Baker.
Sounds good.
Done. So that's the only real change into Peter Davison. The next big change comes with a new Doctor at the end of his tenure. We had. But one of my favourite sort of one-off villain stories, Caves of Androzani. We've had the wonderful regeneration scene. And yes, change, my dear.
And it seems not a moment too soon.
So JNT's really made his mark with colour.
Absolutely.
Not just the title sequence, obviously Colin Baker's outfit.
Yes, colourful is one of the words you could use to describe it.
Oft maligned, oft hated, that piece of clothing. So the music hasn't changed. We've still got Peter Howell's lovely 80s synth electric guitar sort of rendition. Or keytar, I should say. But we've now got a lot more colour in the sequence.
Yes,
we've got this glorious kaleidoscopic prism effect. Lots of blues and some like flashes of greens, and reds, and purples. It's
I prefer it actually. Yeah,
it's a big spectacle compared to the rather cold Davison and partly Tom Baker sequences of the stars.
Yeah.
The logo's got a tint of colour to it now as well.
Slightly upwardly curved.
Yeah.
But not hugely different.
No, not hugely different. Yeah. And with Colin Baker's face transitioning, he is also lit up in garish colours.
Yes, gosh.
And for the first time, we get a bit of animation in the title sequence.
Do.
We get a lovely somber. We get a somber, serious Colin, and then we get a lovely pearly white smile Colin. He's so nice.
I don't think I noticed this the first few times, even the first few stories I watched, because it is quite subtle, isn't it? Really, or maybe it's one of those things that you don't notice until you know it's there. I don't know. Obviously, I noticed the McCoy wink, which sort of spoilers jumping ahead there. But
yes,
the Colin smile I didn't notice the first few times, and obviously I didn't know about it now. But yeah,
I just don't. I wonder if it's because I don't know, like. I wonder if like you don't notice it too much because his face is so blasted with color.
Yes, it's almost not the focus of the
screen.
Yeah,
there's so much going on visually in the sequence.
Exactly.
As it is.
Yes.
As beautiful as it is.
Yeah.
Now, in the break, you told me a lovely little fact about the theme music at this time, the Peter Howell rendition. So tell us about that.
So, I was just looking this up, and I gathered that I'm not remotely musical, but I gather that Howell's theme begins in the key of F sharp minor, which is not a particularly common or standard key. And so basically what this meant is that the composers doing the incidental music for each story needed to end their final cue of the episode, whatever the kind of climactic moment was, in that same key, F sharp minor, or something similar that sort of worked with it, so that the transition into the start of the titles, the closing titles, was not too jarring. And so Howell called himself, the guy who just made it difficult for everybody, because this made life a bit awkward. Which, is an interesting point. I think there are also occasions of I think this might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but there's also occasions of the stories ending with a scream that is pitched to the key of the title music. I think, isn't there an example of Mel screaming at one point?
Probably
I think there is.
Yes, actually, I think you're right. Because I told you the other day I was rewatching Trial of a Time Lord.
Yeah.
And there's that episode in Vervoids where the guy electrocutes himself by touching the door, and Mel's just screaming or crazy. And I'm pretty sure. I mean, I might splicey this in for the video, and the audience can judge for themselves.
Now I'll go first. We don't want you breaking your neck. At least not until...
There is definitely a sort of harmony going on there between Mel and the sort of the tone of noise that leads into the theme song. But there's so much again going on in that sequence, like explosions and all sorts. So it might be a bit hard to pick out, but I'll have a look for that. And I'll put the video up. Audience, judge for yourself. So we go on to Colin Baker's second and last series. The visuals of the sequence don't change, but the sound does. So let's have a quick listen of that. It's not a huge. Well, actually, no, it is quite a huge difference, I think. But anyway, let's have a little listen and see what you think. Okay, so this was the sequence that was used for Colin Baker's second year, the Trial of a Time Lord series. Visually, not much changed, but the music is quite different. It's
quite a departure.
It's got loads more. I don't like using this term, but it almost literally has more bells and whistles on, like the sort of wham, wham sort of noises at the beginning over the diddle-a-din, diddle-a-din. That's new. There's some flourish at the end as well. Some cosmic sort of. Okay, it's hard to imitate.
There's a lovely vocalization there.
Oh, thank you. It's hard to imitate without actually having them instruments in front of you, like some bizarre craftwork gig. What do you think of it? Like the key. There's a definite like sort of changing key as well.
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it's quite well, I've seen other people describe it as this, so I'm just piggybacking off other people's descriptions. But it's a bit ethereal and there's a bit of a kind of haunting's a bit strong maybe, but it's a bit more eerie than the sort of the earlier 80s version, the original Peter Howell that Davison had and Colin had for his first year. It's got a bit more weirdness to it, and so I do like that that's come back. And I quite like the middle 8 as well.
Yes.
It's got a nice middle 8, I think.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something with the descriptions of haunting and other world. This definitely. Now you mention it, actually, it does a good job thinking on it. It does a good job of really introducing that otherworldly eeriness that was perhaps lost with the original Peter Howell version.
Exactly,
Because I just have like memories of, well, very recent memories again, because I said earlier I was rewatching Trial of a Time Lord. And as the theme fades out and you get those little sort of reprises sort of fading out as the episode starts, that is quite haunting, and there is that unnervingness to it. I think you mentioned before about the episodes having to be the final sort of like Mel's scream or the final note of an episode has to be keyed in. I think that plays perhaps better this version because there's so much more flourish and extra sort of decoration on this theme. There's a lot more that individual musical composers for each episode, whoever's working on it, there's a lot more for them to play on, because I remember in Trial of a Time Lord with all of those crash zooms to Colin Baker's face.
They quite a lot of those.
Yeah, they sometimes they'd end on just a cacophony of noise, like a big, and then it would go straight into the theme. I felt like that trick of the end note tying into the start of the theme. I think maybe the changing keys probably lent itself a bit more. Lent itself a bit more well to that, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm not musical enough to know exactly what key this one starts in. No, but yes, I do agree. I think it, but no, I think it does sort of fit that better.
I think the theme. It's like we said with Tom Baker earlier. It would have been nice if maybe, like with Tom Baker, it would have been nice if they'd held out and kept his original sequence for one more year and then offered a complete change for Peter. The same with Colin, if they'd maybe done this musical change earlier with him.
From his first story.
Yeah, to match the sequence as well. But it's not a big thing, really, is it?
Yeah, and it's quite good for what it is as well. I think it was. I might be wrong with this, but I think it was very quickly thrown together. I think the composer, Dominic Glynn, I think he had to put it together really fast for Trial, which I mean is true of most things to do with Trial. I think there's a lot of kind of scrabbling to make it work.
The only thing that seems they put a lot of attention and detail in on that series is that opening model shot with
it's gorgeous,
station.
Isn't it? Yeah, gorgeous. Yeah,
lovely organ.
Yeah,
music.
and the stings of that's a fantastic beginning. Yes.
I think we can move on. So
let's move on.
That sequence was only used for one series, the Trial of a Time Lord arc series, which I think I've learned to appreciate more as I've gotten older. I like a good arc, and I mean, look what Doctor Who's doing now.
I think it's got a lot of plus points. I don't think it's not perfectly executed, but I think it's a very cool idea.
Yeah, experimentation is always good.
Definitely.
Talking with her, I don't think it was experimentation, but it definitely was a divergence from what we'd seen. Is Sylvester McCoy's title sequence?
Yes.
So we don't have any more Vortex. We have 90s CGI. Oh, good.
Yeah, I mean it's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's got sort of, obviously stars like the early 80s Starfield.
Yeah, it still has that big
sort
bang.
of riffing on the same sort of an opening with the kind of explosion of stars at the beginning. But then it's got obviously the as you pointed out, the CGI there, a very early rudimentary form, these sort of flying rocks or meteors or whatever they are.
I called it
space debris.
I called it 90s CGI, but it actually is 80s CGI.
Late
really.
80s,
But it's the kind of CGI that I really heavily associate with 90s television.
Yes,
I agree with that. It's very removed from, like, I mean, in this sequence, it's not so bad because it's all CGI. But it was that CGI when you put it on real, like compared it to real live actors, it would just look god awful, like so fake. But yeah, we open with a big bang of stars. Camera pans round to a swirling galaxy of stars.
Nice purplish kind of color as well. It's quite unusual.
Yeah, we get the 3 CGI asteroids that I didn't actually realize until I started looking at it again, but they do pop into frame in time with the do.
Do they? That's not something I've noticed. That's quite nice attention to detail, actually.
I mean, it might be slightly just off, but there's 3 of them, and it goes
right
in with that pretty much with that.
That feels intentional, then.
Yes, definitely. The camera pans down through the galaxy swirling, and then we reveal the TARDIS in Magic Crystal Ball TARDIS. Magic TARDIS. Will we get another Doctor after Sylvester McCoy? Outlook looks grim, So,
yes, it's weird, isn't it? Because it's got this kind of. I wonder what that's meant to represent exactly. That, as you say, crystal ball. I mean, I suppose it could be something like a kind of force field or something, but it does seem a little bit.
I was just about to say, has there been at this? I mean, the series has been going now for goodness, like 23 years at this point.
Yeah, getting on 25. Yeah.
Yeah, and have they ever mentioned the TARDIS having shields before? Because I know it becomes a thing at least in Eccleston's era, they started having shields around the TARDIS.
Yeah. And even then, it's not a visual thing, is it? You can't see them.
No, it's not like a big, like the crystal ball like this got here.
Yes,
but I mean, it's a nice little. Visually, it looks quite nice.
Yes, I do like it. Yes, it looks like. I tell you what, it looks like. It looks like one of those, oh god, what are they called? Those bubble things that people go on lakes in.
Yeah.
And kids kind of go inside them and they sort of topple around on top of the water. And
the Sputnik ball things.
Is that what they're called?
Like the sort of inflatable things.
Yeah, it looks like one of those.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Well, I think so anyway.
TARDIS and the Sputnik ball. I could go for that. It's nice seeing the TARDIS back in the sequence again. I think that's
definitely.
It's something that's become that's the constant in the new title sequences of New Who. It's always been a TARDIS.
Except maybe the current one doesn't have it, does it?
Yes, no, you're right. Apart from the current one.
Apart from the current one, yes. Most of the new ones.
Which I think is they've bucked the trend. They've got no face, no TARDIS.
Yeah.
So it's
classic
just
in that sense.
Yeah, in the weird way, it's we'll come to it. But in the weird
we will come to it later.
Background circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so we have this crystal TARDIS, and then we get the fade in of Sylvester McCoy's face and the wink.
Yes.
Another explosion of light, and then we get perhaps the I think is the ugliest logo, not just in Doctor Who history, but perhaps in all of television fiction. It's just a big blocky CGI chrome letters with a bright orange sort of. This is what I imagine, like JNT said. Yes, this is the Doctor doing his signature or something like that.
I know what you mean. Yes, the top part, the Doctor, looks like handwriting, doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah. How it's animated as it appears is like a little squiggle and
a
big clustering WHO just come flying in. It's
odd. They don't look like they belong together somehow. The two halves, whereas a lot of the others, there was a sense of unity to the logo. Having said that, the weirdness of it, I'm kind of fond of. I mean, we might talk about this a bit later when we talk about favourite sequences, but there's a lot about this particular one that I find quite hard to dissociate from how much I love the era. And so I feel very positively towards it because I just know that a story I like is coming up, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I can.
You see what I mean? So even though it's not necessarily the best, kind of quality-wise,
I do get what you mean. Sort of like the childhood memories I have is when I see this sequence, all I know is for like near enough certain is that I'm going to be watching a Doctor Who that's filmed almost entirely in video. So we've got the sequence. How about the music?
Yes, the famous Kef McCulloch did this masterwork.
This is possibly my least favorite version. I'm thinking of we've had essentially so we've had the original version so far. We had the Peter Howell and the slight different Peter Howell version. We got this one, and I'm thinking of what we've got coming up in the new Who series. Yeah, I think I'd go and say this is my least favorite rendition of the theme.
Fair. I mean, again, I come back to that thing of I've so much positivity towards the Seventh Doctor's stories that I get a kind of anticipation with delight when I hear this. So in this sort of Pavlov's dog sense, I really like it. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, I can understand that absolutely, because it's not to say that the theme it doesn't have its moments. Like the intro, I think is great. I think
the explosion.
Yeah, how it leads into an episode is good. It's it's that middle bit, the
middle eight. I quite like the middle eight there. Yes, it brings the middle eight more to the forefront, doesn't it? Of the kind of which most versions don't do.
It brings it to the forefront, but I really just I can't stand that sort of electronic harpsichord sort of
fair
rendition.
It does sound very 80s.
Yeah, it almost sounds a bit too 80s. And then you have the like someone's like turning a knob there on the dial,
Yes.
This it's the closest one I feel that is to like a legitimate Delaware edition. Like this is them experimenting, but they've just got it right. They've just got it on the ball, but it just doesn't land perfectly for me.
I mean, Kef McCulloch generally is the composer is a bit of a divisive composer. I mean, he does music for I think quite a few McCoy stories, maybe a couple of Colin's, not sure. Anyway,
he loves his sort of his electric keyboard chords.
Exactly, the stings and the synths. That's sometimes intrusively so.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like I said about the CGI, that's a sort of a quality of TV that I very heavily associate with late 80s, 90s TV. Like soundtracks done on like a Casio keyboard or on a calculator. I personally think this sequence and the music altogether is just perhaps a bit messy. Did JNT really sort of like spearhead like what he wanted with this, do you think, or did he just give the composer like I
don't know about that. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I presume with all these things, with all the different themes, that there must have been some level of discussion about what the execs or the producer wanted in terms of what type of sound they wanted, even if it was mostly up to the composer. I don't imagine that they just sort of said, "Oh, do literally anything, and we'll roll with it." So there must have been, he must have had some, he must have okayed it clearly, and obviously RTD and Murray Gold, they're very in sync, and as we'll come on to later, Murray Gold scores all of RTD's shows. So again, I think he knew what he was getting. With Murray Gold, so I think he must have at least been
aware of it. I guess there is that whole thing about JNT being he knew how to market and sell, but he wasn't necessarily of the creative mind.
Yes,
which is I think it's the biggest criticism landed at him.
I think that's fair. I think he because he's not driven by creative concerns necessarily. I think he has this very patchy record of who he hires. So some people he hires, for example, as the script editor, I'm not such a big fan of, and then others he hires, I think, oh yeah, brilliant. So it's kind of, you never know which way he's going to go on any given decision, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if JNT, like the legend of him like being more of a marketing person than a creative person. I wonder if that sort of really encouraged the BBC when they revived the show in 2003-4, when they announced they're coming back, that they made the showrunner, they made it so it was an actual writer
who was
yes, and not just a producer.
Yeah. And also, I guess it might have been also just changes in TV during that time. So you've had the Joss Whedon kind of figure who's the, Buffy between the end of Who and the revival, kind of coming back to that whole thing of a lead writer who is also basically the boss.
Yeah, writers are getting a lot more sort of, I guess, like freedom to and directors as well, freedom to put their ideas down as
their
they
own stamp on it.
Want them. Yeah. Which lends an air of authenticity to the work. I suppose, especially depending on what the subject is. But anyway, enough about that. We're gonna carry on. Yes. So this
1996.
This sequence with Sylvester McCoy started with Time and the Rani and ended. That was in September '87. That's the first Doctor Who story that aired after I was born, funnily enough.
Oh, fact fans.
Yeah, I was born and Doctor Who went downhill, so I blame myself. But yeah, that sequence ran for 3 years. And then we enter the dark sort of years of, there's no Doctor
Wilderness years.
Yes. And then I think it was, I can't remember when I first heard about it. I think it's because it's so long ago, but it must have been within a year or two leading up to it in 1996 when it came out. The Doctor Who movie, the TV film comes out.
Yeah.
After a big hole
production
development. Yes.
Yes.
A big hole of hell in production development. Yes. We'll talk about it in a second, but first we'll just take a look at the sequence.
It was on the planet Skaro that my old enemy, the Master, was finally put on trial. They say he listened calmly as his list of evil crimes was read and sentence passed. Then he made his last, and I thought somewhat curious request. He demanded that I, the Doctor, a rival Time Lord, should take his remains back to our home planet, Gallifrey. It was a request they should never have granted.
Wow. So it's not very different in terms of like visually what we've seen in the past, but the theme song.
No. Yeah. The music is the big change, isn't it? Yeah.
What do you think of it personally?
Of the score, the theme?
Yeah, the theme.
I mean, I sort of feel about it like I do the movie as a whole, really, which is I don't hate it the way some people do. Some people are really against it and kind of, there were debates about if it even counted at all, back in the day, I think, which is silly because obviously we see McCoy in it. So of course it counts.
Yes.
I suppose my thoughts are just, it feels different and sort of not that much like Doctor Who to an extent. It is that slightly Americanized vibe.
Yes.
But I'm weirdly fond of it at the same time.
Yeah, me too, actually.
You know, it's not my favourite, but I'm kind of like, yeah, that's all right. That's nice.
Well, I mean, contextually, like what this film was going to serve as was as a hopefully as a backdoor pilot to a revived series, which was going to be a co-produced BBC and BBC. Was it BBC America and
Fox? I think Fox was involved
at one point.
I don't know,
Void or maybe ABC. I think.
don't know. Yeah.
One of those networks in America. It was going to be a co-production between BBC America and one of their sort of major television networks. Sorry, fans, if we can't remember. And it's quite an interesting sort of development. Like at one point there were going to be CGI Daleks that had sort of spider legs. Yeah. I think on the documentary sort of behind the scenes.
Oh right, sorry, I thought you meant in the title sequence.
No. The actual series, like the development, like what they were going to do.
Yes, I heard about that. Yeah.
So they've CGI Daleks. Steven Spielberg was potentially going to be involved at once.
Oh, that I didn't know.
It was, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, it was Spielberg. I'm sure, like his production company, I think, was potentially going to be involved in producing it.
All right.
Because there's that famous clip of Alan Yentob being interviewed about Doctor Who, and he's coming back, and he famously says the line about "You might comment, but I possibly couldn't say." House of Cards quote.
Oh yes,
and on the DVD for the film, they actually show some B-roll of that interview, and Alan gets a call, and apparently it's from Spielberg Studios, who were potentially going to be sort of working through the network to help produce it, and then that all fell through, and eventually it was agreed that they would make this TV pilot, and thankfully, they made it canon. Like you said, Sylvester McCoy's in it. So this is officially a part of the canon. It was further reinforced later on when McCann would come back. McGann would come back and reprise the 8th Doctor for the 50th anniversary. We will get to that later. But it's nice. It's funny to think that this sequence could have been what we would have seen week after week if a new series had been developed, and I think I would have been okay with that.
It's got enough classic elements, hasn't it? It's got the vortexy feel. It's not quite a full sort of vortex, but the swirly kind of tunnel.
Yep, and the motion.
And it's got some rocks. If you're a big fan of rocks from the McCoy years,
the asteroids come back. I wonder if they were put in as a little visual continuity.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, we've got the asteroids, TARDIS moving.
No face.
No face.
Got names instead, which obviously carries on for a bit. Quite a while in the revival, doesn't it? The use of the sort of star billing.
Yes.
The lead actors.
Even for characters who aren't your main leading characters throughout the series, because for example, like David Tennant's 4th series, obviously the credits were David Tennant and Catherine Tate, and then by the end you had like all these guest stars. So you had John Barrowman, Agyeman,
flying through,
Elizabeth Sladen, all flying through at super fast speed. This was the first time they did star billing, and not just for the Doctor, but for like you can tell it was ideally going to be a TV pilot, because it has special guest star Eric Roberts as the Master or whatever.
It's as though there's going to be a new one every week, which obviously didn't happen. Yes, and bringing someone in like Eric Roberts, who, I mean, I've not actually seen that many things with him in, but he's in a massive amount of stuff, isn't he? I mean, the guy was a decently sized name at this point. So having him in as your lead, or not your lead, but your lead villain, let's say, it was a big deal, so it's no surprise they went for the whole star attraction.
Yeah, he definitely was cast to sort of bring in the American audiences. Whilst he might not have been known to everyone for TV, I think there was one thing he was known for, being Julia Roberts' brother.
Well, there is that. Yeah,
there is that. I mean, funnily enough, I've seen him in more stuff since then. Like he was in Dark Knight as the mobster.
Oh yeah, he is, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the one that Two-Face bumps off in the limo. I
God,
thought
yeah.
in that. But anyway, yeah, no,
Yeah.
star billing for the actors, first time
Yeah.
ever. The the visuals of the sequence, as you started saying, we've got the asteroids, we've got the time vortex.
Yeah.
Now, the full version of the opening opens up on Skaro, and then we see the master restrained and being executed. We also see his eyes floating in the sky.
Yeah.
At one point,
devilly snake eyes kind of thing. Yeah.
And then the theme really kicks in, and then oh my, the John Pertwee era logo comes flying through the sky.
Yes.
And through space into the vortex.
Yeah.
What did you think of that sort of logo reveal?
Well, so I don't mind, using a kind of, I suppose, classic quote marks logo in that way. I suppose, in the same way as the time tunnel and the asteroid rocks, it's another little kiss to the past, isn't it? What I do think looks quite naff is when it's flying backwards away from us. I think that just looks silly.
Oh, when it's sort of the camera sort of pans with it and it flies down.
Around it, yeah. I think I know it's trying to be kind of impressive and movie-ish, but I just think it looks silly. I know Doctor Who is silly, but
it feels Doctor Who is silly, but the American. Actually, no, I was going to say American TV shows weren't silly, but sometimes they really were. There was Manimal.
It's kind of goofy, but in a sort of not very appealing way to me, anyway.
I mean that
doesn't work for everybody.
That's a sequence that I'd see working for like Star Trek. Like instead of the Doctor Who logo panning across, I just pictured like USS Enterprise. It's just It's definitely Americanized, this sequence.
Yeah. And the score as well, and
However, I one little thing I do love about the score, the theme.
I wonder if you're about to say the same thing I love. I'd be interested to hear.
Okay, we'll see. Well, there's two things I like about it. I really like the build up into it.
Yeah,
like this feels quite grand. It feels very American TV. Like you can see they potentially had some hopes for this. I love how it builds up and then the reveal of the logo. The actual sort of the middle late it's okay, but the thing I do love is the end where it's
the dying
how they've recreated that wah 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 effect.
That's nice.
Like that, and I could easily imagine that fading out every week and just fade into like the controls of the TARDIS, pan up to the Doctor, episode this week. So and so. Doctor, what is it now? Carrying on. I could just see that theme working as a week thing. That's it's okay.
The thing I was going to say that I really like, it's a really little thing actually, but it's I think because it's such a little, almost unnecessary sort of addition or kind of embellishment, I really like it. It's the sort of weird little bits of jazz piano that kind of burble along. Exactly. It's the little plinkety plonk that we get. I really like that. I don't know why, but it appeals to me somehow. I think because it's different. No other version has that.
No, it doesn't. It's a little that literally is the musical. Oh, who is this? It's the musical sort of thing of who is this guy? Like it's the little touch of mystery.
Mystery. Yeah, it's a bit twee, but I do like it.
Yeah, I think not putting the face in was a good idea, considering this is the first time Doctor Who's really been targeted towards an American market. You don't want to put this face in of Paul McGann, and then you're suddenly left with Sylvester McCoy, and there's this confusion as to.
Oh God, that would have been so confusing. Yeah. I mean, I think it's confusing as it is, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously not for us, but for a new viewer.
Well, I think that's why it didn't succeed, because it did okay. It did okay over here.
Yeah.
But it didn't do well in the States, and that was the big picture to get it to get the green light for a full series. If it did if it did well in the States, they'd do more of them.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunate. Yeah. One difference, I don't know if I mentioned it before, with the title sequence, the opening, is I watched this live on TV. I would have been I was a week away from being 9, because this aired on the 12th of May 1996. So I was just nearly 9. And I remember
I just turned 1
Oh,
for your
great.
information.
Thank you for reminding me.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I just turned 9 and I watched this live and I do not remember this full opening sequence that's on the DVD with Scarro and the Master's execution. Never had that. I swear the whole thing just opened up in space with the dun-dun-dun-dun, 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 and the logo. There was no preamble about like what was happening. And then it just cut straight into end of the sequence and Paul McGann's narrating, I was taking the Master's remains, etc.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
I'll have to defer to your judgment on that because obviously I wasn't watching.
Yeah, no, I just have to assume that might have been because, funny enough, I was talking earlier today with a friend about how loads of other countries look at the UK's like watershed, like TV watershed, and go, "Oh, you censor so much." So I wouldn't be surprised if someone at the BBC said, "Oh, we can't have the Master being executed on TV before the watershed. We can't have those scary eyes."
Could be, yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Mary Whitehouse was dead by this point, wasn't she?
I think so. Yes. I mean, I picture her as being old in 1970s, so I'm sure she was certainly old. But yeah, gosh. Well, let's not dwell on her.
Someone, her spirit lives on in someone in the BBC at that point.
Oh, you know it. Yeah.
Scary eyes. We can't have those.
No, not Mrs. Spillane. Mrs. Whitehouse, isn't it? Mrs. Mary Whitehouse.
But anyway, so we have this lovely little bit of Doctor Who goodness to tie us over for another 9 years. My goodness, 9 years. And what was it, about 2003, 2004, I think they announced it was coming back?
Yes, September 2003, they announced it was coming back. Then March 2005, the first Eccleston episode airs.
Yep, Rose.
Yeah.
26th of March, 2005 to be precise. And we had a brand new sequence, brand new everything, and everyone was excited. I remember tuning in on the day it was going to air, like, and thinking,
oh yeah, tremendously exciting.
God, what are we about to see here? And, well, this is what we saw. Wow, so we've got a full CGI vortex. We've got TARDIS speeding through. We've got credits that sweep into view. We've got this brand new logo. Doctor Who's back, and how do we feel?
Well, gosh, I mean, again, with the sort of, as I hinted at in the McCoy one, it's very hard for me to view this objectively because I turned 10 that year. It was the series was airing. Like, it is so bound up with my childhood in that, childhood into teenage years that it's hard for me to, sort of take a step back really, because to me it's just so exciting and it's got such this pace and energy, and and I think, to be fair, that is part of that is it is just genuinely got more pace and energy than a lot of other versions of the theme. It is very punchy. The movement's quite fast through the vortex.
I think I remember watching it live and going, "Oh wow, this is very fast. Oh goodness, wow, slow down a bit. I'm not used to this."
You're getting whiplash.
A little bit, yeah. Well, for starters, the visual sequence, it's a trend that we've seen before. The time vortex. I think it nicely took a little bit from the TV film. We got that little bit of continuity because they had that time vortex with the blues and the reds.
Yeah,
so it was a little bit more loose,
and the names as well, as we talked about earlier. The names flying towards you. Yeah,
exactly. The credits as well. It's nice seeing the TARDIS in the sequence.
I like that little Matrix moment.
Yeah,
where it comes out and it goes back in.
That is a lovely little bit because that's the one constant in the show. If you think about it, is how the appearance of the TARDIS. It's always been that thing, apart from when it got painted pink in Happiness Patrol. But That's the icon of the show. I think it was brilliant to open up with that visual. The theme, I think, is a lovely blend of the original Radiophonic Workshop sounds and new orchestral rearrangements.
Yes.
The
the first one to really bring in the orchestra, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I mean, apart from the TV.
True. Yes, there's a bit more of
that was definitely more of a TV orchestra. Like this.
This is grander.
Yes, this is what would go on to play in the Royal Albert Hall. The proms sort of thing. So I think I don't really think we can say really much more on this. Oh no, what do you think of the actual logo?
I'm not hugely fond of it, to be honest. Again, obviously as a kid, it was what I saw everywhere. It was on all the merchandise and books and things that I had. That's exciting. But looking back now, it's fine. I don't mind it. I think there have been better ones over the years.
I was going to say it sort of fits in. You made me think it sort of fits in the way like the coloured diamond logo.
Yes, it's a bit similar to that.
It's good for the merchandising and it's good for the magazine covers.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But for me, at least for me personally, it doesn't stand out to me as a great logo compared to some of the other ones
Sequence.
we had. Yeah.
Yes, and as well, I think it's the first one I think that is what's the word? It's not stacked. It's all on one line. I think it's the first one that's like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Which is an interesting change. I mean, I don't know quite why. Well, there's no particular reason why it shouldn't have been like that before, or they had to change it now. But it's
I wonder if it's
just a little
maybe
fact,
tie in with how it was to be unveiled in the sequence, because in the sequence it works sort of like how it flips through and the colours match the sort of tone. It's all right. But
I prefer the proper version of the logo they get to later with Tennant to the one they had very originally with Eccleston.
Okay.
It changes slightly, doesn't it? Because the one they have later is the sort of the one that you have on all the books and things.
Yeah.
And it's a brighter colour. The Eccleston one's a bit muted. It looks a bit unfinished to me.
I'll do a little. Here we go. I'll put them up on the screen now, since we can have a look for ourselves and compare
side by side. Yeah.
The visuals of the sequence wouldn't necessarily change. However, when we get to Tennant's, there is a slight. I think that the sort of the ratio from radiophonic to orchestra slightly tilts a bit more in favor of the orchestra. They add a few more. It feels like they add just a few more instruments to the orchestra in that one. And then when we get to his specials series in his lead up to his departure, they almost completely get rid of the radiophonic and make it like nearly like 95% orchestra.
Yeah.
And I think
they go all out, don't they?
Yeah. And as much as I love the radiophonic sounds, I really love that version of of the theme of his last year in that role with those specials. I just think it's
and I think it's got a stronger punch, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
And a stronger drive of the drums. I think of it a little bit as, I mean, at that point, sort of 2008 going into 9, and then obviously to New Year's Day 10. To an extent, I think the show was in this kind of imperial phase. It was about the most popular it's ever been. Really, I mean, in Journey's End was, had that huge cliffhanger, and this isn't judgment of quality or anything. I'm just saying in terms of kind of how big it was with audience popularity
on a national level, definitely.
Yeah,
because I think
I think the music reflects that.
Yeah, because it would break America more after Tennant, funnily enough.
Yeah. So internationally, it's later. Yeah,
but this is when you couldn't go anywhere in the UK without seeing something Doctor Who based, or whatever.
It was as big as it's ever been. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Biggest
it's been since the 60s and Dalek Mania.
And the swagger and the confidence of the music, I think, feels like they know that somehow.
The visuals of the sequence tended to be the same, really. I think they might have exaggerated some of the colours a bit more as well later on.
There's the odd tweak, isn't there? But nothing major.
Huge. No. So in essence, this sequence was used from 26th of March 2005 all the way through to New Year's Day 2010, was it? Yeah, 2010.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
End of Time Part 2. So the 11th hour airs on the 3rd of April 2010. We are at series 5 of the revived series of Doctor Who, and it's the first change of a showrunner, and it's the first change generally, not just small changes, the first big changes to the title sequence.
Yes.
So how do we describe it? Well, it's still the vortex motif. We've got the TARDIS traveling through this tunnel of lightning and clouds. It's a lot more I hate to use the word tangible, like clouds as opposed to worldly sort of energy.
Yes, it's textured and it looks like yes, I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah, no, textured's a good way of putting it. The TARDIS, it's flying around, it's being hit by lightning bolts, it pans out of screen. And then we get flashes of our titles of our credits. So Matt Smith, Karen Gillan. The camera flies through into this fiery wormhole, and the void becomes fully inflamed. And then we see the lovely Doctor Who logo. Probably my favorite logo of the revived series because I love the use of the TARDIS rotating. The TARDIS in the logo itself, and then rotating out as part of the sequence.
It's very nice, isn't it? I mean, I know some people kind of whinged about it and said, "Oh, but it says Doctor Who. That's not the name of the show." But they're just being silly.
Get over yourself.
So yeah, exactly. No, I like it a lot as well. The logo. Obviously, the Capaldi. Well, we'll get to the Capaldi one. It's quite similar, isn't it? But drops the little insignia of the DW. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of this one. I think just generally the overall. Yes, obviously you do have the ready fire kind of motif as you mentioned, but overall I think it's a slightly cooler feel, cooler in the sense of temperature. You know, more blues, a bit more muted, darker, kind of
steely.
Yeah, steely. That's a good word. Yeah. And I like that. I think that works.
I think it's funny actually you mentioning that, because I feel like a lot of the color palette that appears within an era of the show is often reflected in the title sequence.
Definitely, yeah.
So
it's a statement of aesthetic intent, isn't it, really?
Exactly. So in Tennant's era, you get lots of strong reds and blues and very strong colors. You get to Matt Smith's era, it's a lot more cleaner, like muted tones, like grays, darker blues, silvers, and darker greens and browns.
I love it personally. I think it looks gorgeous.
Absolutely, I agree. And then we'll get to Capaldi's one, but again with Capaldi's is quite a steely coloured sort of sequence, and a lot of his episodes have that very cold sort of colour tone palette to them. But it's just lovely how you mentioned that, and I thought yes, it really reflects the era. The text of the credits I think looks good, so I've got no problem with that myself. I like it. I think it matches it. Overall the visuals of the sequence I like. How do you feel about the arrangement of the theme?
I think it's all right. It's not my favorite. I prefer the visuals to the theme, I would say. Which I suspect is also your position, but I don't know. I think it sounds, at the beginning, it sounds a little bit weedy is not the right word, but a bit kind of muted, but not in a good way necessarily.
The bits of the theme you want to be exaggerated have been muted, like the beat of
exactly
that somewhat, I think.
So it just doesn't have quite as much punch, I think.
No. I'd say that the positive I'd give to this version of the theme is the use of a choir at the end.
Yeah, that's nice. That is nice.
It gives that sort of it gives it that grand epicness that you were needing at the beginning almost. That's not me suggesting you should get a choir of people to go doodle-doo-dun, doodle-doo-dun,
God, yes, a cappella theme.
It would be like the use of choir in Doctor Who music. I think was a lovely touch. You get some wonderful orchestrations for the Daleks that use wonderful.
Just
powerful, like deep,
it's
like male
good
choirs.
Stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Murray Gold's great at all that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Murray Gold. I think it's been such an intrinsic part to why the series has been so successful in its revival. That his music really frames the action perfectly. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I like the they tried to experiment with the instead of the big whale at the beginning, they do a sort of electronica.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Which initially I was quite jarred by when I first heard it, but I grew to like it.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Yeah.
But yeah, generally it loses some of that pace and impact that Tennant's theme, especially its later version, had. But visually, I find this a lot more interesting than what we had with the Tennant time vortex. Like colors just speed past at such a speed you can't really take it in.
Yeah. Yes. And here, like you said, we've got clouds, we've got lightning. It feels like there's stuff happening.
Yes.
Visually, and actually that's also quite new, isn't it? As well. I mean, we've had vortexes before, and obviously the broader outline of this is the same. It's a vortex with blues and reds, but the lightning and the clouds, neither of those I think we've really seen at all, have we? There's nothing of that kind.
No, not we've had, because it's like I say, it's like we say, like up until now, the vortex has always been this sort of ethereal, otherworldly thing. It hasn't been textured. It's been a visual kaleidoscope of images and sort of shapes and colors. So yeah, it's a nice, interesting sort of shift. If the theme doesn't quite work out. Speaking of the theme, this version of before we move on, we want to talk about Series 7A briefly.
Oh goodness, yes.
When it was Karen Gillan and Arthur Darville's last half series, so they'd be bowing out halfway through with the Angels of Manhattan. So there was only I think it was 5 episodes. Yeah, 5 episodes. And each one of these episodes, the logo, Doctor Who logo, had a different sort of texture to represent the theme of the episode. So you had Into the Dalek, and it was decorated with Dalek bumps. The Angels Take Manhattan, I think it was coloured like the Statue of Liberty, sort of green copper. I think there was even some sort of, how the Statue of Liberty has that head adornment. I think there was some decoration on the logo of that as well.
Yeah, I always forget when I'm not watching them what they actually used, because well, that tells you what I feel about it, really. But yes,
I think we can say I think we both agree on this. This is Stephen Moffat's stupidest idea.
Yes, which, to be fair, if that's your stupidest idea, you're probably not doing too badly.
No, I mean in terms of he had some decisions writing wise that could be criticized. However, I think in terms of like a visual sort of, this is the antithesis of what JNT would have done. I think like JNT would have said this is a bad idea. JNT, when JNT's a marketing man.
It's
Stephen Moffat's a writer.
I don't love it. I don't love it.
Sure. Credit A for effort, F for result. Let's put it that way. So yeah, we have this sequence, which I think it's my favorite sequence of the New Who's up until maybe the most recent. His first sequence ran 2010 all the way through to the halfway through Series 7A, which was 2012, wasn't it?
Would have been autumn 2012, I think. Yes. Because then it changes with the Christmas special that
Christmas
year.
Special, yes, of course. The Snowmen, 25th of December 2012. Christmas special, halfway through Series 7, and we get a new companion with that, a new title sequence. So we come on to perhaps my least favorite sequence, visually and musically, for the whole of New Who. I think I have to say. it opens up in space. We're panning through various sort of spatial anomaly, nebulae. The camera swirls, pans, and spins around. We get the credits flashing to a background of a big sort of star sky. And for the first time, this is probably the only good thing I like about the sequence. First time we see the Doctor's face included in the sequence since 1989.
It's a brief flicker, isn't it? It's not very strong.
Nope.
But it's there. Yeah.
Tastefully done, very cleverly done.
Yes. Yeah.
In a flash of sort of electronic sparks, the Doctor Who logo is revealed, and then we open up to we're enveloped in this big red vortex. Again, I really don't. I really find this sequence just a mess of.
Yes, I agree.
You can just hear it in my description. Yeah. We're flying through all of this stuff. The camera's spinning and panning all over the place. Yeah, it's just a mess of visuals, personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as saying it makes me feel sick, but it's in that direction of kind of nausea, the weirdness of the motion, and the sheer sort of what am I looking at of the visuals? Because with the others, there's Starfield or the Vortex or whatever it is. There's usually kind of this kind of clarity of the visuals.
Yeah.
Here, it's just okay. There might be nebulae or whatever, but often I'm not really sure what it exactly it's meant to be, and not in a kind of good mysterious way. It's just in a sort of it's just a bit of a confused mess. Kind of way.
It's not like with Troughton when you're seeing these shapes and visuals and you're thinking, what am I looking at here?
Yeah, that's enigmatic. Yeah,
it's enigmatic in a good way. This is just like we've thrown all sorts of shit against the wall and just seen what sticks, and nothing.
I have to agree.
Really. The only thing that works is the little flash of Matt Smith's face.
Yeah, the other thing that's one thing I like. The second thing I like is the TARDIS doors opening at the end onto the adventure. That's a nice little touch.
That is good. That is nice, actually. Come to think.
So those are the two things I like. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they did something with that in Journey to the Center of the TARDIS. When the doors open, something cracks or shakes to sort of imply, we're going inside, deep into the TARDIS or whatever.
Right? Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
I'll look it up. If it's true, I'll splice in the footage, and if it's not true, it's not true, I'll just cut this whole bit. It was a short-lived sequence. It only lasted half a series plus Christmas specials.
Sort of 8 episodes or 9 episodes, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So it lasted until Christmas Day 2013, just after the anniversary special. But speaking of the anniversary special, I should say, we had 2 huge, in very different ways, special bits of Doctor Who given to us around that time.
Yeah.
We had the Day of the Doctor, which was the 50th anniversary special, which had a theme in it, but it was a slowed down action. This is an action film about to start. This is a film about to start. This isn't an episode of Doctor Who. This is a grand epic adventure, a in special.
Yeah.
I think we'd heard that version of the theme before anyway. In some sort of stirring moments, like, Doctor, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna help you. So we've heard versions of that before, so there's nothing particularly special about that for me personally. However, before the Day of the Doctor, we got the Night of the Doctor. Oh my God, Paul McGann stealthed in.
Pretty incredible moment.
I personally, as a fan, flipped out more to that than I did at anything else in Day of the Doctor. I loved Day of the Doctor. I flipped out to a lot of stuff, but seeing Paul McGann in it,
agreed.
Oh my God, my heart, like little 9-year-old me just went, back.
It was very, very special. Yeah.
Very special. It was a short little episode. It's had a very trimmed sequence. It was basically just a blue version of the red vortex we'd had in Matt Smith's Troughton Sequence.
Obviously riffing on that.
Yeah, Paul McGann comes up, and we have a very, very trimmed version of the sequence. I'll flash some pictures up. It's not worth. I mean, we could play the whole thing. It would only take 10 seconds, but screw it. I'll do it.
But probably not the one you expected.
Okay, so you've seen that now. So we had that lovely that month of November in 2013 was just a great time to be a Doctor Who fan.
Oh yeah,
There was
so much going on.
It's not just like, in the show what was happening, but there was documentaries. Brian Cox did a scientific lecture on the science of Doctor Who, which was great.
There's Adventure in Space and Time by Mark Gatiss.
Yes. Oh, the Five Doctors-ish reboot as well.
Yes,
that was brilliant. Like anyone who's listening, like go out and seek these things. Adventure in Space and Time, Brian Cox's Doctor Who science lecture, the Five-ish Doctors reboot. They're all online somewhere. They're all fantastic. And if you're a fan of Doctor Who, they are just wonderful, like homages and love letters to the show, really.
Yeah.
But so we have that, and then we have Time of the Doctor to round off the Doctor trilogy that had been going on, quadrilogy if you count Night of the Doctor. Name of the Doctor, Night of the Doctor, Day of the Doctor, Time of the Doctor. Time of the Doctor ends with a grand finish to Moffat's giant silence arc he's been doing, and Matt Smith regenerates into Peter Capaldi, known as best probably for his sweary rants as Malcolm Tucker on Thick of It. So there was a lot of anticipation about what was going to happen. But with the title sequence, we have something very left of field, something we'd never quite seen before. And there's an interesting story behind how it came to be. So it's the 23rd of August, 2014. Series 8 of New Doctor Who airs. The episode is called Deep Breath. We have a new Doctor, a new title sequence. And like I said before, we showed it. It's something completely different. We open up with a tunnel of cogs, as in that you'd find inside of a clock.
Yes, a steampunk clock. Yes,
steampunk clocks. Yes, we pan around, and the TARDIS appears in a spiral of Roman numerals, as you'd find on a clock face. The camera pans around, and then the spiral sort of opens up into a spiral of planets and stars, and we get our credits, and then we get the flash of those attack eyebrows. From Peter Capaldi. Lovely. We get the flash of the Doctor Who logo. We're in this sort of cosmic tunnel. I guess it's their version of the vortex again. Logo flashes up, title flashes up, and then we carry on into the episode. What do you think of the visuals?
Well, so I first saw these when I went to see Deep Breath at cinema, live in cinema in Edinburgh. In fact, it's actually one of 3 Doctor Who stories I've seen on the big screen. The others were Day of the Doctor, which also was shown in cinemas. And I went to a sort of a preview screening of Death in Heaven in Cardiff, which was quite exciting. But yes, anyway, that aside. So I saw this first on, an enormous cinema screen, and it blew me away. So again, I can't be truly objective here because I've so fond memories of that event that I associate it with that. But I'm a big fan. I think some people I think were a bit sniffy about it's all too explicitly about time. But I don't really get that criticism particularly because obviously this is a show that is not just about traveling through space. It's very much about traveling through time as well. And particularly in Moffat's run, it feels appropriate to bring that aspect to the fore.
Moffat does all sorts of like time-based sort of uses the time travel as a really good narrative tool. Like the whole thing
more
with
than most.
With River Song, for example.
Yeah,
that's all about time travel. So yeah, absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
The story behind this sequence, I love personally because I first saw this on YouTube. I saw the original creation because this sequence was actually created by a YouTuber initially. And Moffat found it, got in touch with them, and had it professionally realized. And I'll be honest, I might need to go back and look at the original YouTube version if I can find it. I don't remember there being a huge amount of difference in quality. I feel like the guy who did the original version did it just absolutely perfectly, and they didn't need to change much. They could have just ripped it from YouTube and put it in. Really, it was that good. I think it's a wonderful.
And he gets a credit and everything, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Wonderful thing.
It's sort of like I vaguely remember watching the 30 Years in the TARDIS documentary, and they're showing clips from like a kids, dinner time sort of TV chat show thingy, and they're showing like the drawings that kids have sent in of monsters, and it's like, we're going to have your monster realized and made by the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, Creatures Effect Workshop. And then they did it in the new series with the
Absorbalov.
Yeah, that was a contest winner. It almost feels like this is almost like a contest has been won by this guy to make the new title.
But even more kind of casual and informal, which is lovely. They just liked it, and I love that. Yeah.
He just did it. He did it because he loved it, and Moffat was like, "Oh wow, what commitment! We'll bring it in."
Yeah.
I understand what people were saying about the time thing, because it is visually such a shift from what we'd had before. It's unlike anything else that's before it and after it.
It's true.
I somehow feel it just perfectly reflects the era of Capaldi.
100%. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the version of the theme? Actually, that's one thing we didn't mention. I'll just quickly go back on the last Matt Smith theme. They stripped a lot of the beats back from that version. In this, they've brought it back, but this feels the most electronic of all the two themes of the new series. It almost feels mostly realized by electronic equipment.
Yeah, that sort of electronic kind of screech almost. Which I don't love.
No.
It doesn't have my favorite of all the themes. I don't think they do that bit so well. But I do really like the sort of the bells at the beginning. That's a lovely touch, because obviously that also fits with the the clocks and time and all of that. I think that's really nice. So it's plus swings and roundabouts, I suppose, for me.
Yeah,
on this one.
Yeah, no, you're right about the bells and the sort of chimes, especially when you get the do do do, and you hear
that's nice,
ding dong ding dong. It really. If there's one word I could describe Capaldi's era as, potentially, and this might sound funny considering we had the Gothic era of Hinchcliffe and Tom Baker, but I find Capaldi's era has this sort of bizarrely Gothic tone to it.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it's pretty dark compared to most eras, probably.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say.
And I feel like the use of the chimes and the bells, it really give off that sort of that vibe, this Gothic vibe. It inspires a sort of an ancient quality, almost a historical quality to the music.
Yes.
And that juxtaposed with the electronic content parts of it. I think as an experiment, I think they work really well. I just think as an arrangement overall, it's not pleasant on the ears all the time.
Especially it is a bit screechy.
Especially that screech bit where it's like, nails on the chalkboard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but generally, I like they kept the use of the eyes. I like the
Yes.
I like the it's almost Salvador Dali, almost really the use of
With
the
the
clock
spiral
faces.
of that's
and
gorgeous stuff. Yeah.
they would make some slight changes through the years, like they'd add some slightly more stronger hues of colors. I think I think series 9 the credits had a more of a purple hue, and then series 10 more of a blue hue was added. There's the infamous one-off use of Clara's eyes in the titles, which I thought another stupid idea from Moffat, I think.
Trolling the audience there.
Yeah, because Clara, I grew to really love Clara as a character once she got away from Matt Smith's Doctor. She worked really well with Capaldi.
Yes,
but
100%,
she still had a lot of heat from fans for that first half of series she did, where her character was just written as love sick to the Doctor, blah blah, and just feel like she matured a bit more as a character, but there was still hate on her up until that point, and that's just Moffat being, like you say, but just being a troll, basically. We also had the first 2 Christmas episodes of Capaldi's had some Christmas decorations. They had snow in the sequence.
Baubles.
Like the planets were replaced by baubles in the sort of second Christmas one. And then you mentioned this to me. You reminded me in one of our breaks about the Into the Lake 2-parter, how that has that lovely cold open about the bootstrap paradox, and you get you get a lovely
the
rock
electric
version.
guitar rendition.
Yeah. Which
really nice.
Which you just know was Peter, which was Peter Capaldi. Look, we're going to do this once, okay? I love Doctor Who. I love guitar. I'm going to play the theme. I'm going to play the theme on guitar once, and I'm going to have the guitar in the show, which is what he does.
Yes.
Wonderful anachronism, riding out on a tank, playing a electric guitar. A shift. Some things land, some things don't. We are now
right up to date.
We're up to date. We're at the final sequence. History has been made. We have a new showrunner who would go on to be the biggest hate figure in Doctor Who history, I think.
It's probably fair to say. Although, mind you, I suspect once we're on the next one, he probably won't be anymore, to the extent that it's whoever's the current person gets the most hate, I think.
Yeah, but it's that old Simpsons quote. It's like this is the worst day of my life, worst day of your life so far.
Yes, that's right.
But yeah. However, though, one decision this person did make is they cast the first female Doctor. Now, what I love about how we first saw the sequence is that we didn't get it in Jodie's first episode. We just got the little sting of her theme when she first shows up, and we just dropped right into the action. So we didn't actually see this title sequence properly until her second episode, The Ghost Monument, 14th of October, 2018. We start off with some sort of pulsating matter in the center of the screen, and then there's a massive explosion, and in what I can only describe as a modern day HowlRound effect in CGI.
Yeah. Even as you were sort of struggling almost for the words there of pulsating matter, I was just thinking we're right back to title sequences where you don't really know exactly what it is that you're looking at, but in a good way, I think.
Yes.
Compared to 7B mess.
Yes.
Now it's that mystery. It does look very classic, but it's classic with a really nice modern finish. And yeah, I think it looks lovely.
Just that sort of shape that forms, that sort of curved shape, it sort of flowing in on itself. It reminds me of Pertwee, the sort of diamond sort of shape thing flowing. It reminds me of all of those old HowlRound effects. I feel like it's a lovely little. It's how it starts as well. That's that little pulsating light. It reminds me of just how Hartnell starts, like the energy just flowing.
It is
out
the
of
most like Hartnell for the beginning. Yeah. And well, talking about most like Hartnell, the theme. Oh, sorry, am I interrupting you?
I thought you were going to say something else. I thought you were going to mention no face, no TARDIS.
Oh, that's true. Yes, it's classic in that sense. No face, no TARDIS.
Yeah, no face, no TARDIS. Just the credits. What was I going to say? Yeah. So we have this sort of swirling vortex of matter, like a modern day HowlRound effect. We then sort of pan into it with the after the Doctor Who logo appears, and then the camera starts panning. The imagery starts sort of peeling away, like starlight starts sort of coming through. It's like we're going at warp speed. Gets faster and faster and faster, and then flash,
and whoosh
into the episode.
Well, to the title first, I suppose, but yes.
Oh well, it's the title of the episode, and then into the episode itself. I love the HowlRound thing. When we get after the logo and it starts sort of panning and tilting again, that's when we get maybe a little bit back to Series 7B. It's getting a bit messy,
a bit crowded, a bit busy.
Not so bad.
No, it's cleaner than that. Yeah.
But it's I think, however, the I just can't get over how that thing looks when it first just envelops the screen.
Yeah, it's gorgeous
in time with the music. It has that natural sort of feel quality to it, like the old HowlRound effect used to have. It has that otherworldliness as well that you used to feel. So it really much feels like we've come full circle in many ways back to what we had from the very beginning in 1963.
Which was, I think, quite a canny decision in 2018, or well, whenever it is they took it, but obviously, it arrived in 2018 because obviously, they would have known this is a big, bold new era that's doing a radical thing in terms of casting the first female Doctor.
Yes.
That, let's put it nicely, has pissed off some people. I mean, probably most of those people sort of deserve to be pissed off, but doing that and at the same time sort of doing something very retro is quite smart, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a nice sort of symbolic rebirth of the whole franchise because it's like you say, it's doing something that has never been done before. And I think it's visually I think it's like my probably my second favorite of the new ones. I cut for that very reason, that it reminds me of the past on a few on very subtle but many levels. What I love most about it, though, actually, is the arrangement of the music.
Yes,
because I didn't think I'd ever love a bass drop, because bass drops are the most overused sound effect in trailers for films.
Yes, but it sounds so new and different for Who.
Yes,
that it's just gorgeous, isn't it?
And how it visually working with that pulsating.
Yes, in a way, I just wish the whole thing was longer. I wish we had just a bit longer before the bass drop of the build-up.
We get another couple of counts of four.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yes, that's what I'd like, a little bit longer. But that's only saying this thing is so good, please give me more of it. Which obviously, is not a big complaint, really.
I think they've done a good job, again, sort of tying back to sort of the visuals sort of being a bit retro. They've gone back to the radiophonic, the original whale. With a minimal sort of orchestral backing. I mean, I said earlier, like Matt Smith's first one was probably the most electronic sounding of the modern ones. This one feels like it's the most perfectly blended, because there are orchestral and electronic elements within the music, but it feels like they blend so much more better than others have before. Like the radiophonic workshop sound,
it's a lovely mix.
Well, yeah, exactly. They mix really well together.
Yeah, great work by Shigeru Nakanola, the new composer. Yeah.
Yes. And generally that the Jodie's tenure so far has had some wonderful pieces of incidental music. It's not been as flamboyant
No.
as past ones. Like, I remember Clara's theme, like dun 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 da 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 da. It's so
Yeah,
whimsical. There's not much whimsy in this music, but it has a very strong emotional resonance.
Yes, it's a change of vibe after 13 years of Murray Gold, however long it was.
Yeah, Christ,
12 years. Yeah, a long tenure. And obviously anything would feel a bit different coming next, but I really like what he does. Generally.
Some good stuff there. I'm looking forward to seeing her last series. Not looking forward to seeing her go, but I've enjoyed her era. Just a little side bit. I just want to say I have enjoyed bits of Jodie's era. I've enjoed her as a doctor.
Agreed. Yes,
I think she's been.
I love her
Exceptional.
Her work,
yeah. Just God damn it, Chibnall.
It wouldn't be a Doctor Who YouTube feature without saying that at some point.
I mean, that people can't see it, but I'm shaking my fist right now. Chibnall, shake harder, boy. Yeah, I'm gonna every time I make an aside about polarizing showrunners like JNT, I'm just gonna flash up Chris Chibnall on the screen, just saying, we remember you. I'm gonna flash up that picture of him where he was actually bad mouthing JNT. It's just.
One of the most successful BBC television shows has got to be Doctor Who, and the theme music has gone straight in this week at number 27. It comes from Mankind.
Final thoughts on the evolution of the title sequence. Like,
gosh, we've come a long way, haven't we? I mean, we've gone through however many it's been. I've lost count, and also there's all the ones that we've not had time to mention. All these extra bonuses. Things used in audio dramas and the rest of it.
The dimensions in times.
Dimensions in time.
Yeah.
All of those. So we don't have time for all of those, but that just shows how many there are out there. So yeah, it's quite a treasure trove, really.
It's something that's very reflective of not just the because Doctor Who as a show has been very reflective of the times it's in. Like
100%. Yeah.
During the miners' strike, there's stories about miners striking. During the times of like sort of recession in the sort of 70s, there was lots of anti-capitalist sort of sentiments in Doctor Who. Like there's an episode where the workers throw the guy off the roof and cheer, hooray, our evil overlords been killed.
And you get Russell T Davies, spoofing the Iraq War. This keeps coming back. None of this is new.
And especially
Russell on the times,
and especially with Russell T Davies, because there was such a gap between his era in the 80s. A lot more representation of LGBT characters.
Yes,
with Captain Jack.
Huge shift.
So it was very reflective of the time. And the title sequence, I think, matches that, at least in terms of the aesthetics of what was going on. So you have the earlier sequences that are very experimental, because TV at that time was still an experimental format. Color comes in the late 60s and 70s, and they really play around with that with Pertwee. They take what they've learned so far and they really nicely sort of fine tune it with Pertwee and Tom Baker's sequences. Move into the 80s and it becomes all synth and guitar and electronic music. But it's mainstream electronic music this time. It's not experimentation. It's mainstream now.
No.
This is what's actually happening. And visually sort of reflecting what was going on, I think, in TV as well. Like, not just the effects they use, but like the sort of use of stars in science fiction title sequences. Like we'd see that in like Star Treks for the next few decades and things like that, and other science fiction shows.
And I mean, I don't know much about the history of music videos, but I gather that I was reading somewhere somebody was saying that looking at the aesthetics of Who in the 80s particularly, and comparing it to what people are doing in their music videos at the time, you can see such an overlap of kind of, styles, which I think is really interesting.
And then, of course, like aesthetically within the show, we get a lot more of like the title sequence reflecting what's happening in the aesthetics of the show with the color palettes and sort of themes of the stories. Like, he definitely became a lot darker with Moffat, and so his title sequences are a lot darker and
the dark fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. So like the show, it's moved with the times. I think we both have like fond memories attached to all of the sequences in some form or another for varying reasons.
Yes.
Like, even though I hate...
None of them are... Sorry, no, go on.
I was going to say, even though I hate Series 7B of the new of that title sequence, I remember that title sequence and how it made me feel going into The Name of the Doctor, that particular episode, and thinking, oh, geez, and The Time of the Doctor as well, and thinking, it always did a good job, basically.
Bravo, Doctor Who.
Yes, bravo, and bravo, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop and anyone and all those people at the very beginning for like laying the groundwork with something that become iconic. What's your favorite out of all of them? And I know this is going to be a hard one.
Oh gosh, yes. I've been dreading this question because it is so tough. Because obviously there's all the different criteria of, the visuals and the music and, what works best for me. I'd narrowed it down to 3.
Okay.
One of which I will probably not necessarily meet with your approval.
I think I know it.
No. But so, okay, I would probably say 3 that I would have to put near the top are the very original Hartnell, and I'll dwell on why in a second. McCoy, which is probably the rogue choice here, and the Capaldi years.
Okay.
And again, I think with all 3, it is really a strong personal element of with those. It's because there's something in that era, some magic that particularly works for me that I really love. And so the title sequence is so associated with those stories, but they also all do have things that I really love. I love the innovation of the clocks and the surrealism and the time motif of Capaldi. I love the cleanness and the kind of mystery of the original. I think it's so eerie. I think that's beautiful. And McCoy, I don't really have a good defense. I just love it. I don't really have a good reason. I just think it's great.
It's your guilty. It's your guilty. I mean, like I said earlier,
it is my guilty pleasure. Yes,
because I watched a lot of McCoy's ones as well, and I have that sort of same feeling. Like I said about 7B, like I have memories of it. I have good memories of that theme, but compared to all the others, I just can't rate it up there.
Fair. If I had to pick one, which I'm going to have to, because otherwise you will never shut me up. I would say probably the very original, because I just think it has, when I watch it, because it is black and white, and it, therefore it feels so ancient, even though it's not actually that long ago. It feels mythic. It feels like I'm watching a sort of broadcast from, almost sort of the dawn of television itself. Not to be too over the top, but and I just think it makes the story feel whatever's coming up. Whether it's good, bad, it just makes me feel what I'm about to see is it's kind of this sort of a mythic story that kind of sends a shiver down my spine, really. That'll be my choice.
The music itself, just from day one, unlike anything else, I can't imagine how this would have come across if they had actually realized that music on a piano with an actual band.
Yes, the original kind of arrangement, you mean, or before it had been,
it just wouldn't have. I just don't think it would have had the. It would have worked as a theme. I just don't think it would have worked as a theme for this show. I think it would.
No, and I don't think it would have become as iconic.
No, I think it would have worked beautifully as a theme if it was realized on piano. I think it would have worked beautifully as a theme for like a detective show or something, like a Private Eye.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, yeah.
For me personally,
Yes. Go on, James.
this is it. This is really difficult because, like, I know you're well watched up on the classic stuff, but like you say about when you first saw Doctor Who and you saw Tennant Sequence and how that had such an impact on you, I think I have to sort of say the same about Tom Baker's intro, because he was the most prolific Doctor. Like in terms of his tenure alone, he was the longest serving Doctor. To this day, still is. Probably will be the longest serving. His videos were the ones I think I had the most of as a kid. And I think and again, that's just because he was around for so long. There were so many more stories of his available on the limited release BBC were doing on VHS. So, and I think I said when we were talking about that sequence, his first one, how every piece of it flows from one to the other. There's no wasted motion. There's no extra, like, frills on it that make it a bit busy like later sequences might have. It's just, it's still got that original arrangement of the theme as well, which I really like.
Yes, so there's the kind of the connection back to the very distant beginnings.
I think that's
a great choice.
I think I said in my rundown, like, for the Tom Baker sequence, the Tom Baker and the last John Pertwee sequence was like taking all of the lessons they'd learned for the last 10 15 years or whatever, and 10 years at that point, because it was just after Pertwee left, and putting them and refining it all and making it more consistent. And that's why I personally like Tom Baker's one. Honorable mentions to Matt Smith's 7A. Sorry, first one, series 5 to 7A.
I was gonna say not 7A.
Yeah, no, not 7B. No, I like the use of the choir in the theme for that. I like the slightly slower paced traveling through the vortex. I love the logo and the transition of the TARDIS for that. Again, that's another one where that doesn't feel like it's probably number 2 on my top, in the top 3, because it's like Tom Baker's in the sense that it flows from one thing to the other really well.
Yes.
It just occasionally has those extra little bit of frills, like the lightning's probably a bit unnecessary. And then, of course, we get to 7A with the unnecessary texturing of the words of the logo and stuff. But yeah, there's that one. And then I think I'd have to say, if we're doing a top 3, I'm going to say Jodie's. I really like Jodie's.
Yeah, the current one. Yeah.
The current
lovely,
one, just because they've done something a little bit different with the theme, which I think works. They tie that in with the visuals. Yeah, I think
that's funny. We've chosen 6 and none of them are the same. Yes, which is, I could very easily put your top 3 as my top 3 as well, because I love them all. It just shows how good they are.
We haven't really decided what we want to do for a next episode. So I was thinking, how about a top 5 one-off villains in Doctor Who?
Very good. Very good. Good shout. Yeah. I'd be up for that.
I think we could get some good entries over that. I have a feeling we might have some crossovers here and there, like potentially.
True. Yes, I suppose.
Gives us more time to talk about it together, so we're not talking about individual entries. But so that's what we'll do next time. Top 5 one-off villains in Doctor Who.
Looking forward to it. That'll
be great. So that ends, I guess, this pilot episode of Coming Along. I guess I'm going to call it that. I mean, I've said it now. I can't really change it.
Thank you so much for having me on, James. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me. I look forward to doing it next time. It's been absolutely fun talking with you generally again.
Yes.
Not just for a podcast, just talking about something we both enjoy. It's been great.
Yeah.
And catching up has been good. So yes, next time we'll do a top 5 one-off villains, not guilty pleasures. We'll do it another time. Top 5 one-off villains. Thank you, anyone who's been listening. You can follow me on Twitter at stream_Gene. That's where I'll be posting all of my upcoming YouTube podcasting, and when I go live on Twitch and stream games, so you can get notifications there when I go live. Tom, do you have any social medias, things to plug? Anything?
Don't have any particularly to plug. I've got some creative things I'm working on that as and when they might come out, I might plug them. But for now, no. It makes me sound very antisocial.
All right. That then. Bye, everyone.
It could have been a lot better.